Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here on this April 20th, a Sunday. Thank you for tuning in. Happy Easter, guys. So, anyway, what's going on here is looking at the markets. We've got a very unstable market right now. And I think this week's going to start to tell the tale a little bit. The Dow ended the week at 39,142, down 527 points. What's interesting is the Nasdaq, the S&P, and the Russell didn't tend to fall as much on the weekend on Friday as the Dow. You know, generally when the Dow falls over 500 points, generally they follow suit. In fact, the S&P actually gained 7 points on Friday. But we're entering into a very unstable period for markets. It's not just the geopolitical scene that's happening right now. It's also uh, the tightening that they did and also raising interest rates. Did you know, funny thing about raising interest rates? You'd think that that would modify inflation. Actually, it doesn't seem to hurt inflation to raise interest rates. you know, um, it's supposed to taper it back, but in order for to really taper back inflation, you got to get the interest rate quite a little bit higher than the rate of inflation. If you just raise it somewhat, if you're working with a real inflation rate of say around 12%, and you raise the interest rate to like 4%, it's just going to exacerbate the problem of the inflation. If you got a 12% inflation rate, you got to get the interest rate up to about 16%. And this is what happened during the Volcker era. Paul Volcker, as the chairman of the Fed, they had serious entrenched inflation during that period in time, and they had to get the in. You guys all remember? I remember back in I guess it was the late '70s, when you could put money in the bank and you would get a very high percentage back each year. Like just a standard bank account, I think was getting like 10% interest per annum. So if you had $100,000 in the bank, you could get $10,000 interest on your money back then. And honest to gosh, back in that period in time, you could live on $10,000. You didn't need to make the kind of money you make today. So with just $100,000, you'd be set for life. You could collect your $10,000 interest every year and live off of that. Back then, But now we're seeing that, and that did the trick. Paul Volcker come in and he put interest rates so high that he actually killed the inflation. But they can't do that now; it's impossible. So, at any rate, what's happening in the world actually? This isn't the story I wanted. I'll get back to this story, but what's happening in the world is Iran right now. We're getting moving very close to a war with Iran, and it's all hinging on this nuclear deal. They've given them 2 months, and that must have been pretty near a month ago. They gave them 2 months, a couple months to come up. And I told you guys, everybody was saying at the time that, oh, they're going to war with Iran right away. But they're going to strike Iran. On and on, they kept saying. I told you guys, hey, look, they're going to wait this time out, this time frame that they gave them, the 2 months. And if they don't get a deal when this 2 month period ends, yeah, then I could see them do something with Iran. It says hope for Iran nuclear talks are tempered by threats and missed messages. So how's it going, guys, over there? How's it going? Well, it's tempered by threats and mixed messages. So I was just thinking about something. You know, everybody says Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. Some people say they have a nuclear weapon. They've had plenty of opportunity to get a nuclear weapon. They've been enriching uranium for ages now. Okay? I was just thinking about something. What if they did have it? I was just going, what if? What if they did have it? How would that affect their talks? In other words, if they got one over there in a bunker someplace, You know, they got one underneath the ground over there in a bunker. When they're approaching these talks, it would be altogether different than it would be if they really didn't have one. I would think. You know what I mean? And especially with the part where, you know, if they are successful with some sort of a nuclear deal, they're going to have to let inspectors in to almost every nook and cranny of their underground whatever complexes and every place to take a look at what they got. That will all be part of the deal. And if they had one, they sure wouldn't want that to happen. I'm just saying, you know. Uh, okay, I'm going to go with a whole spiel that they don't have it. Everybody's saying they don't have it. I'm thinking in my head, hey, why don't they have it? I'm thinking to myself, if they don't have it, why don't they have it? It's more like the question I'm asking. It says Iran and the U.S. have led a second round of high-stakes nuclear talks. Why is this important? And why I'm focusing on this right now is because if war breaks out and the United States is involved with Iran and war, they've signed these pacts and stuff, like Russia and these countries. They've signed these pacts where if somebody attacks you, they attack us too. And these treaty talks and stuff, these treaty pacts that they sign between countries, and oftentimes they'll sign them in quiet. They don't even tell anybody they're signing them, but they're kind of like a protection deal. The same thing that NATO has with Article 5. If any country in NATO is attacked, you attack the whole of NATO. Well, other countries form these deals too, you know. And Russia and Iran, have they formed some sort of a pact like that? I'm not exactly sure how tight it would be. I know that countries like North Korea signed a pact with China, and you know it's called the Sino Pact, I think it's called. They're pacts, PATC. It's a pact between two countries, and it basically goes like this: if somebody comes in and attacks you, well, we got your back. That's basically how it works. You know what I mean? Uh, and so this is a very dangerous escalation. If this were to happen, if the United States were to start to bomb Iran and Israel bombing Iran, uh, Iran is part of the whole thing with the BRICS nations and stuff, and it's almost like they're getting to the edge of World War III when that starts happening. Really, really close. Too close for comfort for any of us in here. And it might actually get scary. If war were to break out between the United States and Iran, it could get scary really fast. I'm talking scary to the point where your friends and neighbors start to go out and prep for the first time ever. You know, the grocery stores could go empty overnight because people get really scared. The majority of the population, see, up till now, majority of the population out there, okay, you guys watching here, you've been on top of this all along. But the majority of the population out there, they haven't got a clue. And they haven't been paying attention. They think the world's always as it has been. But all of a sudden, if they do get a clue, and because everybody's telling them, oh, this is it, this is the end of the world or whatever, they're going to run out and start prepping. You know what happens if the majority of the population starts to do something like that? You haven't seen nothing. You think the beginning of COVID was bad when people were starting to run out and start to prep a little bit? That was only maybe 20% of the population or less. But no, if you get 80% of the population in a mad panic to try to save themselves, they can cause more damage than it's amazing. This is what I refer to as a human stampede. Is when they get riled, when something get a whole big crowd of cows out in the middle of a field someplace, and if there's a big lightning strike or something, and they all stampede at once. There's no sense or reason behind it. It's just they got scared. There's a large group and they got scared. And the same thing can happen if we get really close to World War III. In other words, if they start to use tactical weapons on each other, the world is freak. They will freak out. And they will panic. There will be panic at that point, if that were to happen. Just saying. Now, as far as cows, we're talking about cows. prepare. You guys got to prepare too for food shortages and stuff, because this world is unstable right now, the world we're in, and the herds are being gutted in the United States, and it's going to drive beef prices to new highs. It's a 73-year low in the herds of the United States. They only got 86 million head, and you can see by this chart here how it's been dropping, the amount of cows out there. Seriously, that equals about 1 cow to every 4 people. They should have at least 1 cow per person in the United States as a meat supply in case of troubles. Not 1 cow to every 4 people. That wouldn't last. If that's all we had to eat, that wouldn't last very long, I'll tell you that. Now, what? It's inconceivable. And I mean, even me saying it here, I probably, that people would think, oh, you're nuts. You're nuts. They would never do something like that. I don't trust them as far as I can throw the whole works of them, and I couldn't even pick them up to throw them. They're so crooked. Crooked as a snake's rear end. Now, what else did I have to show you guys? I had a whole bunch of stuff I put up here to show you guys. We looked at the markets. We've looked at everything except what the markets are going to do this week, and it's going to be a very interesting week, I think. I think we're on the edge of a really serious downturn in the markets that could scare people as well, quite seriously, if it gets bad enough. Now, you guys, I wanted to mention something to you guys. Remember a show I did, last show I did about silver and stuff? I kind of really didn't tell you guys what I was expecting. I'm expecting silver. I said it was going to languish. In other words, silver ain't going to do real good for the next little while. Yeah. And I think for about the next 8 months, I think you're going to see gold continue to rise, and silver kind of like just not really making it compared to gold. And what I was trying to point out was that I think the peak of that would be that I don't think it's going to make it over 140 to 1, the gold to silver ratio, before it starts to turn the opposite direction. I think there's a massive moves for silver coming about 8 months from now, maybe a year from now. When finally everybody looks and says, gold's been doing so great, what in the hell is wrong with silver? When the attention shifts, and it's going to, and I think it's going to get up to close to 140 to 1, maybe 130 to 1. All of a sudden, you think the attention's going to shift. And they're going to say, why have we been focusing so much on gold when there's and what's going to cause that really to happen is, I think the exact thing is this downturn in the economy is going to shut off an awful lot of these mines that are not exclusively mined for silver. They don't mine for silver. They mine for copper, lead, zinc. Right? And the economy is going to turn down so bad that they're going to slow those mines down. Just slow them down. And that's going to really undercut silver, because 80% of the silver comes from those mines. And suddenly industry's going to say, oh my gosh, these mines aren't producing like they were producing, because they were right after the copper, because they needed it for everything, that the world's construction, the world's building itself, that they need lots of copper. Suddenly the world's in a slowdown. They don't need quite as much copper, so now they're not getting as much silver. Boom. Silver shortage. Boom. World's attention shifts away from gold and says, why have we been leaving this behind? This is great. This is good like gold. Bam, the gold's getting shorty. Can't get enough gold. Gold's really, really high. We're going to go after, and the main people start to come into the market then too, like just ordinary people. They've been staying out for the most part. But if you were to just say, okay, let's have everybody in the world have 1 ounce of silver. We don't have 8 billion ounces of silver. That means somebody's going to fall short. Somebody ain't going to get any. There's not enough to go around, even for 1 ounce for each person. Not even a half an ounce for each person. There's not enough to go around. So when the main masses start to say, hey, you know what? What's wrong with our money? It's going to clear to, like they use money day in, day out, what they call money, which Federal Reserve notes, or here in Canada, it's Canadian dollars. They use them day in, day out. And all of a sudden, they're all going to want once. Everybody's going to say, what happens to our money? Prices are going up. When this moves to the next level, they've seen inflation, but now when the inflation starts to become really, really bad, really super bad, then they're going to wake up and say, hey, what's going on with our money? Our money's becoming valueless, and they're all going to want to hop on board. They're all going to want to have something that they can hang on to that isn't losing, say, 10% of its value every month. I'm serious. It can get that bad that quick. Just in a few months, it could get that bad where the sort of thing where you go into the store, say you want to buy pie, and say it's $5.99 for a pie. You go in next week and it's $7.99. That's when they're going to say, when it's going up that quick each week, and then the following week it's $12.99. Just a week later, and then another week later it's like $14.99. When it's going up that quick, people are going to say, what's wrong with my money? And what can I do? What can I do? And the people's money has always been silver. And so you can see they can snatch it all up. None left for anybody. And taking a look at what the markets did this week, we seen this S&P end the week at 52.82. It was up 7 points on Friday. Now the Dow was down. That's 39,142, down 572 points. NASDAQ was down 20 points at 16,286. The Russell was up 17 points at 1880. And gold was up $12.90 to 33.41. Wish it was still 23. Man, that even seems high to me. In my mind, 2,300 seems high, and now look at this, 33.41, and still climbing like a rocket. Now, see, that's the thing. I don't think silver's going to catch that until this gets worse. And then when silver does catch it, it's going to be an all-at-once sort of thing, and it's going to have so much catching up to do. I think silver's going to catch it when it gets around from somewhere between maybe $35 to $40, in around that range. It'll probably be like $37.50 or something like that. And then it's going to catch it. It's going to catch the heat underneath it. That's when the tension's going to shift back, and they're going to say, hey, you know what? Gold's $5,500. They're going to say. We bid it all the way up to $5,500, and silver's still only $36.75. Oh, let's grab some silver. That's what's going to happen. And it's going to happen suddenly, and silver's going to be somewhere around probably maybe 135 to 1 gold, or maybe even close to approaching 140 to 1. That's when she's going to snap, and that's when you're going to see silver. The ratios start to come back down again. First it'll come down to 100, and then it'll come down to 80, and it's just going to keep moving and moving. And gold's going to keep going up. It'll be 5,500, and when gold's probably up around 10 or 12,000, or maybe even $14,000 an ounce. And we're going into a hyperinflation, guys. This is more than possible what I'm talking about. That's when you're going to see silver start to go into these ratios of where it used to be, like 30 to 1 or 15 to 1 even, or 10 to 1. And I think it's going to overshoot that, and it's going to go all the way up to about 4 to 1. But gold by that time probably going to be like $15,000. Maybe 20,000. Gosh only knows how high it'll be. And silver at 4 to 1? Silver will be worth more than gold's worth right now per ounce. And I'm not talking like 30 years from now either. I'm talking just, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years is all, something like that. And not long at all. And people are going to be amazed. You're not going to care on this end. You're not going to care whether you paid an ounce for, I mean, by the time it gets to where it's going there slowly but surely. It's going to go there. The only problem is when it gets there, what's the world going to look like? Terrible, terrible. U.S. Treasuries right now. We're going to talk about that in a minute. As soon as I'm done with the markets here, I want to talk about that. How bad the world's going to be when gold prices like that. It's going to be a totally different world than we live in right now. We might not be using fiat anymore at that point. It just might be a total wreck. They might be using nothing but gold and silver. People might not want, and even cryptos, because we might be living in the kind of world where the power's out more than it's on. Your power grid might only be on for an hour a day. How are you going to transact in Bitcoin if your power grid's down for most of the day, every day? Big long lineups everywhere, and people will have to go back to something that works. If you're living in a world that's unreliable, power grids, this world, see, what happened was like in the 1970s, 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, everything was spreading out. We had America, land of opportunity, but had lots of dirt roads everywhere, like through the Midwest and through all these different states. There's a lot of dirt roads. During the 70s and 80s and 90s, they went through and they paved those roads. Civilization was expanding. They put telephone poles through, and people got power out in these rural neighborhoods and stuff that never had power before. Well, that infrastructure was spread. It spread out, that infrastructure. But now that infrastructure is getting in decay. What you'll find is those rural roads that they paved in the 1970s or 80s, they haven't got the money to pave them anymore, and they're going back to dirt slowly but surely. They're breaking apart, these roads. And the telephone infrastructure starts, and the telephone lines and stuff, they're having a trouble keeping up with that too. What do you think's going to happen when we go in to this period of worldwide turmoil? Well, civilization is going to decay back. It's the same thing that happens like if a person falls in a really cold pond of water and stuff, icy water, and they're freezing to death. What happens is the body will draw the heat back to the core, and it'll let the extremities freeze if it has to, but it'll in a self-preservation of life, and the system will do exactly the same thing. It'll withdraw there's certain areas where the system just can't support the infrastructure that was expanded out in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. If we get this massive worldwide global depression and war on top of that, it's going to have to withdraw back, and it's going to leave areas that you might be living in one of those areas right now and not even know it. And what's going to determine those areas is going to be whether they can keep the power supply running into them or not, keep the internet running into them. And you won't know it right on this side. You won't know if you're in one of those areas, because it's going to be pot luck whether it occurs in your area or not. And it's going to have a lot to do with luck, I mean, when you get grid outages and stuff, look at the people that live in your particular area. Uh, how law abiding are they? How will they be able to keep stability, or will the people go crazy and tear down the structure of infrastructure? They can. Like, metals are always worth money on this planet. And if the power grid goes down for too long, they will rob the power grid itself for the metals in it. And then they can't turn it back on. Can't. Unless they repair it. And if they're that short on funding and everything that they let it go down in the first place, do you really think they're going to be able to come back in and repair all the damage to the infrastructure that people can do? Like, picture if that happens to your neighborhood, there's burnout cars all over the highway everywhere. There's this structure, buildings have been burned down. The power lines have all been scavenged for their copper. The people in that area might be all completely uncivilized at that point. There's no law and order anymore, and the system doesn't have the power or resources to actually come back in and straighten it out. So now you're in the Badlands. Now there might be 50 miles away, you might cross over into an area where that didn't happen to them, where they still have internet and power and they still have police force and everything else. But they won't have the resources to do anything about. And this is already happening on a small scale. Areas, certain neighborhoods like in Detroit and places like that. It's already because of lack of funding. You think it's going to get better? It's going to get a whole lot worse. It's going to be a whole lot more homeless population is going to double and going to double again. That's where we're going. That's where the world's going. We're going to go through troubled years. But I think we're going to come out of it on the other side with a very high technology base, much higher than we have now. And on the other side of this, but it's going to take a few years. This is going to have to all play itself out. Probably be playing itself out the most in the latter part of the 2020s. That's going to be the most unstructured period. And then during the 2030s, society will be restructuring itself. This is what I think. This is my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. Now, Bitcoin right now, we're seeing $84,459 for this computer algorithm. Our bonds and rates, we're looking at the 10-year at 4.33%. And the bonds are tending to move up right now, which could be a crisis all in itself. Thank you guys for listening to my show. You guys have a great rest of the day, and we'll catch you very soon again. Bye-bye.